Well, good morning, everybody. It's a nice, brisk November morning. It's supposed to be pretty nice today, about 60 degrees, so I'm pretty excited to get out today, get cutting. I know the farmers behind me in that cornfield are working on their harvest, but it should be a good day to get out. I got a lot of logs I'm gonna get cut up today. I'll show you that pile. I've been pretty busy this summer. My wife and I had a baby girl, so that's kid number 3. We've been very busy. That's why I haven't been too active on the YouTube channel. But I'm still wanting to put out some good quality videos for you guys and show you what we've been up to. But lately it's been mostly just trying to keep up with everything and get it done and not having enough time to film. But today I'm hoping that's a little bit different and plan to show you some of what we got going on. So check this out. So just shortly before she was born, a buddy of mine had made contact with a fella who does some amount of small clear cutting and takes down trees that are in the way for homeowners or people who are trying to build a home. He gives away, or is willing to give away, whatever he doesn't need or doesn't want, because of course he has an abundance. So my goal is to get through these. They've been sitting for a while, you can see, because they came just before my daughter was born, and I did not have time right then nor in the short time after to do much. I cut up a few of them that were a bit crooked that I knew I wouldn't want to use for anything else, but the rest have been sitting here. Not super sure how nice they're all going to be on the inside. There's some amount of cracking on them. I tried getting some of them painted, so at least a few of these walnuts here, and those I believe are cottonwood or some sort of poplar. Those have been painted, but of course you can still see the mushrooms growing off of them. So my goal with all of these is just to make as much dimensional lumber as I can. Wood-Miser's got a little guide to making rift and quarter sawn wood out of your log, so you don't have really any waste, but you just utilize the log fully and you just have a mix of each kind. I have a shed I want to build in the future. I have some furniture projects I might want to do, so I'm really just looking just get as much done as I can, and then I've got it all sitting and drying, and in a year or 2 or 3, however long it takes for it to dry, then I've got it there, I've got it available, and we can just act on any projects we want to do. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. All right, well, I've made some good progress on this first log. If you aren't familiar with Wood-Miser's quarter sawn and rift sawn guide, they say basically take off the top and the bottom around the core of the log, which this one had a little bit of a curve to it at the end, which I cut off at the beginning off of that chunk there. But other than that, I cut off the top and the bottom, and then you flip this on its side, and now you've still got the core. So what I'll end up doing is basically spacing such that I have 4-inch here below where I can make 2 2x4s, because this is 4 inches wide that I've cut, and up here potentially bigger than a 2x4, but essentially I've got to cut the core here out along the length of this. It's just a place where you get a lot of cracking and a lot of splitting, and so if you can cut that out big enough, you can use it as, say, a 4x4. I don't want to do that here because then I'm going to lose out on having a full dimensional 2x4 here below and above. So I don't want to give this extra. You just kind of have to think through where you're going as you cut this. All right, well, I've got my core cut out. I went ahead and made it a 2x4. I don't know how well it's gonna dry, if it might crack or split. Maybe I'll have to put a couple screws in it to hold it all together, but we'll just kind of leave that as a little bit of an experiment to see how well this can do with that situation. And I didn't sacrifice any of my 2x4s in here by doing that. So these now will go sideways, and I'll cut out right through them to split this basically in half, 2-inch, 2-inch, and I'll have a 2x4 and a 2x4 here once I cut then this side. So I'll cut these 2 out. I'll do that as well with that piece there. Then I'll have all 4 of them up here, and then I'll run through to get rid of the live edge all at the same time. And then I know I've got at least that dimension identical between all of these. And so that's kind of my plan there. All right, so I'm about to cut that top section I first cut off. I can tell because that top piece that I had to cut off just to kind of even it all out. And that could easily lead to some warping and bending of the beams that I'm gonna get out of here. But I'm gonna go ahead and cut it anyway. It's like I still got some core because of that. So I'll have to be careful where I'm cutting and how I'm utilizing this. But I'll try and maybe see if I can make several 2x4s out of this. But I did the other piece already that I'd cut off, and it was hardly worth cutting. I probably shouldn't have even bothered. Should have just made it firewood. These are the scrap pieces left over from it, and pretty as it is, I mean, there's not a lot to it. It's not terribly worth it. The one piece that I salvaged out of it is a 2x2, and have a feeling it's going to bend and warp. If it does, walnut is fairly rot resistant compared to some of the poplars and things that I cut. So this is something I could use as garden stake to hold up tomatoes or something, if indeed it does get warped, where it's not really going to matter too much if it's warped. So I ran into a little bit of a problem. I wanted to put several of these all together on the mill so I could cut them all at the same height. And I am getting them at the same height, but I've got to do it one at a time. Let me show you why. So here's one of the ones that I haven't cut through yet. And if you'll notice, even though it's on the straight side that's already been cut, we've got a bit of a gap here. So I think this is a consequence of having not cut this stuff very soon after it was cut down as a tree. I don't actually know when the tree came down, since this was from someone else, but I know I didn't receive it till about 6 months ago. So we've got some concentrations in the wood that had kind of formed, and it was drying irregularly and all of that as a log. So now that it's cut, I think some of that tension is just kind of releasing. What I've got to do is take some of the pieces that I've cut off, kind of use them as shims, and I'm shoving those under here in order to essentially get this about the same elevation off of this bunk as it is off of the bunk on the other end, where it's resting, of course, in the middle as it kind of teeter-totters here. But the idea is to even up these sides, and then I make a cut that's above 4 inches that can still cut through all of this, make a new clean cut on this side, then I flip it, and then I make my 4-inch cut, and then I'll have my good 2x4 that should already have a lot of those stresses released at this point. And this should be fairly true to how it wants to behave because it's already close to the final size. So I'm really hoping this kind of mitigates some of the issues of drying crooked that I could get from this. And at least on these ones so far that I've already done this with, they seem to be doing fairly well and being really straight. This one's actually the core. You can see just how straight this came out after I made a additional cut on it. And then you can see the straightness when they're put next to each other. and they're looking really nice. So I'm hoping that that holds true as they dry. At least with this way of sawing, you have that extra live edge that's the last final cut, and because I haven't picked that full dimension yet, I'm able to cut that a little wider and then recut the side I already cut. So it feels like I'm doing a whole lot of extra work, but at the end of the day, I think I'm gonna end up with some nice pieces, well, that really dry straight and are much more usable and nice to work with at the time that I finally wanna use them. There we go, I've got a shim under there. Of course, you don't want it sticking out in the way of the rollers from going across the track here. And I've got a shim down here as well. This one kind of varies in thickness, so I was able to put it exactly where I wanted it in order to just kind of keep that tight and flat. And of course, I got it secured down with the clamps, and now I can raise this probably about a 1/2 inch. I think that's how much extra I have, but I can run that first pass. If that's not quite right, I can bring it down by 1/4, then flip it and cut that other 1/4 off and get it down to the 4 inches I want. All right, testing my work. Down here, we do have a little bit less material on this side, so I had to slide it down to get to the first flat spot. But this spot is flat, and there is no rock to this at all, no matter how I move it. Looks like we're nice and even on both ends with good contact, so we've got that right where we want it now, and can make our final cut, just bringing it down about a 1/4 inch. And as you can see, that worked out quite nicely. Got down to our exact 4 inch, and there's no rock in that at all. So nice, straight piece, and hopefully dries the same way. All right, there we go. There's the first log done, and it's lunchtime. So I'm probably not gonna get very deep into all of these today, but the scraps are over here, and the little extra offcuts over here from kind of getting all of these cut to where they're flat and a lot more even on both ends. But if you take a look here, the longest ones here, which some of these, they're really not full true 2x4s all the way to the end, but at least like the one here and the one here and the one here that all are, those are about 9 foot 5 inches. So pretty good sized pieces here. And then we've got this is about 3 3/4 wide and a 1/2 inch on the thickness. Don't know what I'll use it for. It was hardly worth putting that piece back on to do it. But I went ahead and, you know, cleaned up the edges on that, so I won't have to do it later. And then the 2x2, which will probably just be a garden stake. But yeah, there's one log. And now I'm gonna just keep doing that same process on the rest of these and show you guys how today turns out. Well, now that it's fall, I really don't get a lot of time to cut. The sun's already going down, and it's just 5:30 today on Sunday. But I did get 3 logs cut. Check out what we got. So I ended up getting about 15 or so 2x4s of various lengths. Some of them I'll be cutting down to the actual length there, depending on use and all that. But for now, I'll leave them like this. And then that third log I cut, I made a 9 inch here. So this is a 2x9. That's a 2 by about 7.5. Just kind of making these. They're essentially slabs without the bark on the sides, so that way I don't have to worry about what that does to it when it dries. So I've got 2 of those and a third one that's back here already set up to dry. So the plan is to stack everything in here as kind of a new area. Just have to go around the center post for the shed in here. But that's where I've got this 2x7 here, and then this is another 2x4 and another one, just part of that same count of 15. But I'll be putting them in here and probably just using some of the other lumber we've got. Got plenty of 2x4s and things in here, so I'll use those to stack it up, and that's where we'll keep that. Because I can enter either side of the shed through those doors, and I can actually get around back here where some of this other wood's stacked just fine. So I think this will work out pretty well. and get some good airflow, get this opened up when I need to kind of let some of that out, and it just kind of allows a little bit more out anyway. So yeah, thanks for tagging along, and it was a good weekend to mill. About 60 degrees out here, so about probably the warmest weekend we're gonna have left until next spring. But if you guys enjoyed this, be sure and check out this video here next. Thanks for watching.